Right. Well, one of my neighbors actually is a stock trader. Like he's a day trader. That's what he does. And I asked him, so tell me about GameStop. Are you in on that? What do you think? He's like, oh, I stay away from all that. I'm like, you are a day trader, an options trader, and you're not interested in the GameStop, what's going on? He goes, no, that's online memes.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get started, I just have a few short messages. First off, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this podcast. It's the best way to help us grow and help me get on bigger and better guests. Also, don't forget you can pre-order my book, To the Moon, The GameStop Saga, right now by following the links in the description below. We've also got a few quick sponsors for the show today. Keep It 100 with Dakota and Chorsey is a podcast that takes an inside look at the relationship of two friends and what shapes them. It might be all about two friends, but the show is far from sweet and wholesome. It's not for the faint of heart, so don't listen if you're overly sensitive or around your grandma, unless you want a lecture about the degradation of society. If you've always dreamed of a podcast where they can discuss whether gerbils masturbate, or pitch a pad thai hentai fusion restaurant, then this is the podcast for you. Though, if that is what you're dreaming of, I would like to refer you to a psychiatrist. New episodes of Keep It 100 are released every Monday, and you can check out their website at ki100pod.com for new episodes, merch, and to sign up for their newsletter completely free. That's Keep It 100, available wherever you get your podcasts. Keep it nasty, keep it 100. Links for everything will be in the description below. So check them out and then please enjoy the podcast. So hello and welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I'm here with Tim Weninger, the Frank M. Fryman Collegiate Associate Professor of Engineering in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Notre Dame. Tim, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
That's a long title, man.
Yeah, well, as you get in this job, like they keep giving you longer and longer titles. That means that you're doing something right or something terribly wrong. But exactly.
Well, it seems like you're doing something right. So yeah. So we are here to talk about the concept of the hive mind and the internet and social media and all those wonderful things. Because I came across your work after I saw your TED talk a while ago, and then sort of revisited it as I've been exploring this idea of the hive mind as part of writing my book. So why don't you kick us off with what exactly is a hive mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this idea of a hive mind is something that I didn't come up with, but I think it kind of latched on to 7 or 8 years ago when I was looking at how people behave in online social spaces. The idea that people, when they're on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit, they are not seeing random things. So they're not seeing the most recent post. They're not seeing a random post. Instead, they're seeing things that are been made popular. And so the posts that become popular are popular because other people have voted on them to make them, they've liked them or shared them or upvoted if you're on Reddit, to make them become popular. And so people see the things that other people say are popular. And this is like kind of a self-reinforcing system to where people see things, they read things that other people think are popular so that they have a chance to vote on them. And the more that people vote, the more people see them. And so that reinforces what popularity begets popularity. And as 120 or 150 years of research has shown, people start to, they are what they read. And so if you start seeing headlines and images and posts of popular content, other people think are content, you'll start taking that and internalizing it, and then you'll start thinking in that way. And so popularity begets popularity, and then the way that people use language, the way they post, the way they have opinions is cultivated in this kind of hive mind. And as you become, a new user comes in, they slowly become they slowly become part of this group where popularity is what the group says it is. So this idea of a hive mind is where everyone thinks the same, and they share a language and they share group mores and these things. And so what I've been trying to do is study, how does this hive mind come about? What are the consequences of that? What are can we change what people think and how they believe and what they talk about? And we've been doing that for the past 10 years or so, and got a lot of really interesting stories to talk about.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into some of that. So why don't we start? You kind of give me a nice path there. Why don't we start with like how this hive mind comes about, or how a hive mind begins to create itself in your mind?
Yeah. So how the hive mind. So what we started off with this idea of popularity. We wanted to say, okay, how come one thing is popular but another is not? And the idea here was to find out, can we make a robot, some stupid agent that would potentially change or manipulate or otherwise influence what became popular online. And so what we did is we wrote a robot, a computer program that went, and every 2 minutes it went to a social media site and it found the most recent thing at random without looking at the title. We took that item and then we did one of three things. Because we're trying to do some science here, we as a control, we just did nothing, we watched it. But half of the time we liked it, or if we're on Reddit, we upvoted it. If we're on Twitter, we retweeted it. And then that little nudge, that push of information then goes into the system as some kind of interaction. Then the system, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, takes that into their algorithm and then surfaces it up. It goes higher in the chain of what other people see. And so then other people will come along and they'll see this higher in their news feed, and then they'll read it and they'll have a greater chance of upvoting it or liking it. And so what we found is that a single like, upvote, retweet has an enormous effect in what people see. And I think it was actually, now this is a little while ago, so the numbers might be slightly, I might get these slightly wrong, but if I remember correctly, if I upvoted you on Reddit, the score of that post was twice as high as if I didn't. And and also it was, I think, 25% more likely to reach the front page. That was just one vote early on. So this idea of votes, popularity begets popularity, people see what other people vote on, is kind of how this what I'm calling the hive mind comes about. And this is not just on Reddit. The same thing happens on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any kind of thing. So, and it's a consequence of the algorithm, because it's trying to surface what people want to see.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think these algorithms, the YouTube algorithm, the Twitter, the Facebook, and the Reddit algorithm as well, I'd say that's potentially less powerful in the way it selects, but I could be wrong. But do you think that the algorithms that have been created to make your timeline or news feed or whatever that platform calls it, is that like the most powerful like single piece of technology that exists in the world? Because it seems like it's like what they label as things to push up or push down the algorithm, or the way they categorize things, is the difference between like 5 and 1 billion people seeing something.
Yeah. I think I haven't really thought about it in that context. I'm trying to think of something that's more powerful in modern society than the news feed.
Yeah, it's difficult.
And honestly, that's tough. I nothing comes to mind. But so you're absolutely right. And the same thing happens. The same thing was true before, right? There used to be a handful of editors that worked at CBS and the New York Times and NBC and ABC that they decided the news that made the half-hour TV show at the end of every day, right? And those people were extremely powerful. And they were usually professionals. They had a code of ethics, and they had hopefully everyone's best interest in mind. But we've kind of said, you know what, let's get away from that. Let's have just everyone collectively serve as the editors of the news. And so through our votes, through our likes and retweets, and then what the algorithms, takes and decides based upon all that information, that becomes front page above the fold. So we are now the editors of our friends' news. You and I collectively determine what our neighbors see in the news, which is great. It's democratized things. There is no small cabal of editors and journalists in charge of what is news. At the same time, those were professionals, and maybe so there's good and bad in that, right?
Yeah, no, the decentralized nature of the power is always excellent until things fall apart and you realized why things were centralized.
Exactly. So there's this idea of the tragedy of the commons, right?
Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things, because people, right? But it's also because people don't have time. So that they rely on the algorithm, the filter, and back 20 years ago, the editors to tell them the news that was fit to print. That's the New York Times's their motto, right? All the news that's fit to print. And now it's just everything, and we rely on the algorithm to tell us what is important or not. And one of the things that we've realized, and we actually did a study maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, that looked at people's browsing behaviors. And we found that people don't read the thing before they vote on it. I mean, I don't. Most people don't. In fact, on Reddit and Twitter, we found that 75% of all retweets and upvotes, occurred without the user ever actually opening the link. And on Facebook, I didn't do the study on Facebook, but I remember seeing a study somewhere that said it was like 95% of all likes and shares occurred without the user ever reading the thing.
Wow.
And then we wonder, where's all this fake news coming from, right? It's because we are the editors of the news, and we're not reading the things that we're editorializing.
Yeah, it's not even that, and that kind of suggests that it's not even people like seeing articles that have factually incorrect information in them. It's that people are just seeing a headline and repeating the headline to each other, which is like can be really like misleading by itself sometimes. Yeah,
and that's where clickbait is a thing where they want you to click on the thing, but clickbait, it works for people to click on it, but really it's just the headline alone. Most people, when they go to Facebook, don't click on anything. They just browse. In fact, I remember watching my wife. She was on her phone and she was scrolling, and we had this kind of tactile motion where we use our finger and we kind of scroll up on our phones, right? And I asked her a question, and she looked up at me, and I was talking to her, but she kept scrolling on her phone. It's just a tactile motion that we make with our finger. We're just scrolling. We're all a bunch of scrollers reading headlines, and every so often we'll like or share or upvote something. But we're too lazy to actually read the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and this takes a different question, right? Does Facebook and Reddit actually want us to read the thing?
Oh,
because if you read the thing, you're not on Facebook anymore. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a.
I mean, I guess that depends on how the algorithm's put together. I know Twitter, for example, prefers native content. So they like you to watch and see and interact with things that are like images or videos on the platform rather than links out. So they get they're more visible to people when it's like a tweet or an image than it is if it's a link. I just happen to know that, but
right. And then also, I think Reddit spent untold millions of dollars trying to get their own image hosting and video hosting service for the same reason. Fortunately, though, so based upon this research, not just myself, but others in this space as well, Twitter now will ask you before you retweet it. For some people, they'll say, "Are you sure you want to retweet this? You may consider reading it before you retweet it." So they're trying to slow down this kind of rapid retweeting. I don't know if it's working or not, but it's something that
happened to me a few times.
Yeah. And I studied myself. I actually put myself in the study, and I'm guilty as well. I was like, so the 75% for everyone, I was in the 60s that I upvote and retweet without reading the thing. I'm guilty. We all are.
I will say that that's perhaps a tiny bit skewed by, now this could be like a tiny factor, but just the idea that sometimes I will read a headline about something in something, I don't know, I'll see it somewhere and I'll read up about what's happening, and then later on I will see people posting on Reddit or tweeting about it, and I already know what the article is about. I've already read like the information, and I will tend to just like retweet it because I'm like, oh, you know, I saw that, this is important. I didn't share it myself, but someone's made a good comment on it. But again, that could be a really tiny thing.
That's fair. I don't know how. I don't know how. There is one thing on Twitter. The way we started this on Twitter was we looked at Bitly links, and so Bitly links will actually tell you how many times they've been accessed. And so I think that it was 75% of Bitly links they had never been clicked on.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So that's and that's just the nature of it, right?
Yeah. No, it really is. Anyway, I wanted to get to some of the other things that I'd written down. We could spend forever talking about the Twitter algorithm.
Sure.
So you mentioned at the start there that your conception, at least, of a hive mind is one where everybody sort of tends to be thinking the same, I think was the term you'd used, that it's sort of pushing everyone in a similar informational direction, at least. So do you see the different social media networks as different hive minds, or do you just see the internet as one hive mind?
That's a great question. The different social media algorithms all have different interfaces in the way their algorithms interact with people. I think the better way to think about it is that when you join a social media community, you link up with your friends, and then your friends start sharing content, and that kind of leads you into that direction. So you go down a rabbit hole depending on what community you kind of sign up to. So now we have this idea, not so much of a single hive mind, but as multiple kind of hive minds emerging, where there's a conservative and liberal and maybe football and ice hockey, these hive minds of communities, echo chambers that some people call them, where as you enroll into the system, your initial follows and your initial signups take you into a space. That's the same thing on YouTube. There's this idea of like these rabbit holes you can go down on YouTube, because if you watch one thing, your recommendations will be similar things, and you'll go down this rabbit hole, and you'll eventually kind of get immersed in this sometimes just awful, terrible network of bad content. And then you have to like, wait, how did I get here? What has happened to me? And then, but you've spent the last 2 hours looking at, I don't know, how to build a dirty bomb or something, right? And it's just because the same kind of idea of the algorithms are trying to keep you on the site. And by doing that, they're trying to show you the recommendations are based on things that you're looking at already, and the things that your friends have looked at, people similar to you. And this recommendation is all about this idea of showing you things that they think you're going to like. And that's self-reinforcing. The content reinforces itself, of course. So to answer your question, I don't think there's a singular hive mind. There is an internet culture. Memes are a big part of internet culture, something I've been studying more recently. But as far as individual communities will have different languages. And actually a lot of the fake news that gets spread is spread by people who know that the information is false. So there's some research, not my research, but there's some other research that's shown that people spread fake news within their own community as a reason. They know it's false, they know it's fake, they know it's not true, but it's as an in-group signal to say, I'm sharing this content to let you all know that I'm one of you. I want to be part of this club. In order to be part of this club, I'm sharing this information, so I'm one of you. And as people keep doing that, they start to kind of believe their own BS. And so that's this kind of echo chambers and this kind of tightening of and reinforcing happens in these communities. And that's where more rabbit holes form. And it's now that I think about it, it's a really kind of difficult, almost beautiful quagmire of information and social signals that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it's
and how do we fix it? I don't know.
Do we need to fix it? Right. Okay. Because so I understand exactly what you're saying, right? So my first book that I wrote, Brexit, the Establishment Civil War, about the first half of that was me literally just being like, look, people, we need to realize how dangerous the internet is for like spreading really false ideas, for propaganda, for bad actors to exploit, especially things like the way that Facebook's algorithm was set up to reward interactions, as in like it didn't matter how hate, like the more anger and hate basically, especially sort of through 2015, 16, 17 that was expressed on a post, the more people would react and the bigger it would get, and it kind of blew up like a billion different tiny little bombs, slowly destroying our political conversation over a couple of years. And yeah, so I'm very familiar with all of the concepts that you've mentioned as sort of like bad parts of that, the echo chambers, the rabbit holes that you can go down. Like YouTube, for example, I know has been bad. It depends what their algorithm is doing at this exact moment as to how bad it is, but it tends to drag you down. Like say if you're like thinking about eating more vegetables, like your next video is recommended be like the all vegetarian diet. And then if you watch a couple of those, it'll be like extreme veganism, like, oh, don't eat anything with a shadow. And like, it takes you down these like it takes you down like ridiculous rabbit holes of like more and more extreme content.
Exactly.
But
because that's what YouTube thinks you want. And the more extreme, the more people cling to that content because it's interesting and it's different and new and extreme and
But like the thing that I'm really interested in at the minute is so I don't know how much you've been watching about the whole GameStop saga that has been sort of going on since January. Obviously, it's been very, very focused on Reddit. And what I have witnessed over the past 8 months is like what I chose to write about, which was this like community hive mind of people that has been like the kindest and in a way least crazy part of the internet that I have ever encountered. Like normally what happens, I've seen at least, when you get a whole bunch of people online, especially when they're talking about like massive levels of fraud and corruption, is it just descends into the worst kind of like discourse that you can possibly imagine. It'll end up nearly always in some form of horrendous, like Jews run the world sort of conspiracies. And it never ends well. People get into echo chambers like we've talked about. But somehow the community that I've been watching, that have been sort of slowly like researching and watching this thing happen with GameStop and Wall Street, they've managed to stay not only really positive, really like nice to each other, and really focused on what they're after. And it's not descended into crazy, stupid madness. And it's made me reconsider whether we've been sort of like, I don't know, bad mouthing the internet. Maybe it's got a lot more to offer than maybe it's more like what we originally conceived it as, rather than the pessimistic way that people have looked at it for the last 5 years. Yeah.
So that's part of the culture of these communities. So the GameStop community that was on, what's the subreddit? Wall Street Bets.
Yeah,
right?
Well, boy, it's come along.
And it is a handful of others, right?
Yeah.
The different communities will have different social norms, and some of them are, let's treat everyone kindly. And that has to be moderated. And it could just be that if someone comes up with something crazy and that's too far, the social mores will just of other communities say, no, you get downvoted and you get and maybe even moderated away. That's a very, as far as the social interaction goes, that's a very healthy kind of non-terrible community. Now, as far as their actual aims and goals, that's another kind of discussion you could have financially. There's a lot of, I don't know a lot, but there's a decent amount of talk about conspiracy theories about hedge funds who are actually doing a pump and dump kind of thing. They're charging this with through paid shills and accounts. But now I think it has kind of legs of its own. And but you're right, that is kind of a positive story. Now there's going to be, now financially, there might be some bag holders of GameStop at the end. And it might be some poor financial decisions that happen. But if you think of most of the communities, if you look at the college football community or the NFL community or ice hockey, they're really pretty positive. They're there to discuss a topic, and they discuss, and there's some kind of maybe a bro culture a little bit, but otherwise, it seems like a good place to be. It's where religion and politics get involved is when things kind of start to descend, because I think the stakes it really has to do with a person's innate, deeply sense of self. If you're challenging someone's religion or political identity or gender identity, it becomes an attack on the person, their identity, not just their fandom, right? If you attack, I'm a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm from Kansas originally. If you say the Chiefs are terrible, they're never going to win a game. Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, most people are going to like, that's fun, you know? But if you say that, I don't know, men are terrible or something about how being male is toxic or something, then like I identify as a man, that cuts me. That cuts me deep, and I will retaliate because that's part of my identity. And to say, so religion, politics, different identities that people will defend and lash out. And then other people like to troll others because they realize that that's a good way to get people to lash out. And so they will do that as just kind of the same, just like the traditional bullying, right? You will latch onto something that because it hurts their feelings and it makes them lash out. So it's fun for people to turn the screws a little bit. And that's what trolls are after. They get their kicks from making people angry. And they don't, I mean, many of them might actually be racist or Nazis or something, but I'd say a lot of them are just off to get their kicks from making people mad. Because there's no consequences online.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the troll culture is really interesting. And I haven't studied it, but some people, so Jeremy Blackburn, for example, he's a professor up in the Northeast.
What's his name? Sorry.
He studies,
Who was that you're talking about?
Oh, Jeremy Blackburn.
Jeremy.
Yeah. So he studies. He says that he studies assholes on the internet. That's his job. And so
he'll never run.
Yeah, write that down. Talk to him. He's really great about just studying trolls and how they antisocial behavior. But that's a whole nother kind of part of the internet culture is these kind of toxic things where just trolls are trying to make people angry because it's fun and there's no consequences.
Yeah. Okay, so that gives a nice little segue into this next question. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the online world and the offline world. So a lot of the time when I hear people who would be very big within the internet culture as such, people say like Eric Weinstein, Joe Rogan, people who have huge followings online, but don't really cross over into the sort of mainstream media or real world sort of realm. And I was curious as to, because you'd spoken about this in the TED Talk, actually, about this like feedback loop or the loop of things that happen like from the offline world to the online world and sort of accelerating and sort of contributing to the madness that then comes into the next one, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
How much influence do you think the online world really has? Because so there's quite a lot of times that I see things that are just massive online. Like you couldn't miss it if you tried. Like there's no way you could write a filter good enough to stop seeing information about this. And yet then when you say move to the real world and you ask someone about it, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. Like my book,
Right.
I know, and everyone on the internet at this point basically is aware that some people on Reddit think that the hedge funds in this story have lied and are, still lying. And everyone online is aware that this thing is happening. But if you talk to people in the real world, everyone's like, what? I've never heard of this. So like how much there is?
Right. Well, one of my neighbors actually is a stock trader. Like he's a day trader. That's what he does. And I asked him, so tell me about GameStop. Are you in on that? What do you think? He's like, I stay away from all that. I'm like, you were a day trader, an options trader, and you're not interested in the GameStop, what's going on? He goes, no, that's online memes. So exactly what you're saying, like this offline, online, I think it's two different cultures. Right. And it's the same thing with like if you look at anything. So a lot of people are really big into the National Football League or even in the UK, the Premier League. Right. And some people could care less. But if you didn't see that goal last night or you didn't see that catch last night, I'd say a third or half of the population is deeply invested in that. And the other half just couldn't care. The same thing. There's an online culture of TikTok dances and Joe Rogan podcasts and GameStop memes that people on the internet are just deeply in. But if you're just a casual Facebook surfer, you don't care. And so to your point, the answer of does it become part of popular culture? I think it does, but it's not like if you're the Ice Bucket Challenge, for example, I think maybe, was it 5-6 years ago? That people actually physically took buckets of ice and poured it over their heads, right? That was an actual physical thing that happened. And so it does find its way into mainstream culture. And then people often will talk about, Donald Trump's Twitter account, right? That's online becoming offline. So it does have a big effect. But as far as the day-to-day updates of things, it does permeate the culture, but I guess in a less obvious way, I'd say. But people will talk. They'll use language now that has made its way from online. And so I'm at a university, right? I've got a bunch of college kids, and they will talk in acronyms. They'll say RIP when something bad happens, which means RIP, which means rest in peace, which means something bad happens. That's too bad. Rest in peace. But that just has become a word people say now. And so the language we learn from online does make its way offline into the real world, but it slowly happens because people aren't that invested all the time. But it's more of a it's not insidious, but it's more of a slow creep of information.
So it's kind of like maybe say kids in the 60s were going to their rock and roll clubs and the parents were like, what's this new culture? And, they had no idea that it was really going on or what was happening there. But so you're saying it's just like a new, but quite large sort of subculture in a way?
Yeah, it's a new it's a subculture. And there's lots of small, tiny pieces of the subculture. So for example, the GameStop subreddit, I mean, how many people are actually trading GameStop right now? Maybe 10,000 or fewer, I would say.
Way, way more, man. Like so many.
No, currently?
Mm-hmm.
You think so?
Minimum, like absolute minimum, about 700,000 or 800,000.
Really, 700,000 or 800,000?
Mm-hmm. It's so much bigger than
I mean, back when it first started, yeah, it was huge. Like they had to shut down Robinhood for a little while, right? It just broke the clearinghouse.
Yeah, well, we don't know what it broke.
But
that's like literally coming out at the minute. Like this is ridiculous. Like people like Ken Griffin lied was trending on Twitter last night, and then the hedge fund came out to like defend themselves on Twitter. It's like that's not the actions of an innocent group, because there was a bunch of text messages released, and like it's so difficult to tell what actually happened at the minute. It's so like a swirling mess of wild accusations. And
but is it still, are people still, like, this is now what, 6 months later, or no, 4 months later or something? Are they still in it? And there's 500,000 diamond hands out there?
Yeah. It's
really, I thought it was so everyone poured ice on their heads for like a month, and then it went away. Coney 2012 or whatever was a thing for like a month, and then it went away. But so this has staying power, is what you're saying.
Yeah, this is what fascinates me about it. And this is what I was saying at the start, is like, this is not like a normal online community. Usually they would have got bored, and instead of getting bored, what they've done is they've like tripled, quadrupled down. Like people haven't just like held since January; they've been buying more and more and more. It's insane, man.
I need to get back. So I actually had a handful of my graduate students who actually spent a large amount of their salaries buying this. So
I hope they held on.
Good on them. So that's fine. I didn't realize that it still was so large still, because I followed it and then I got bored with it, just like everyone else, right? But so I assume what happened with everyone. But okay.
No, there's still a very, very hardcore and dedicated group of people who are still thinking that the price is going to absolutely go through the roof again, and that what happened in January wasn't everything coming to a close, that it was some sort of price or market manipulation to make it look like they'd done that. And the past 8 months has been the community all trading theories and trying to put together the evidence as it comes to them as to what the reality is. So we're still waiting to see, what's true and what's not, because it could just still fizzle out and be nothing. But I don't know. That's not what it feels like to me, at least.
Yeah, there's a lot of
caught up in it, so I find it difficult to judge.
I'm gonna have to think about that a bit more. And this is part of kind of that popularity begets, right? There's this cumulative effect of things that people kind of go into this, and it maybe does it become a conspiracy theory that happens. And then, if you tell someone who has a deeply held belief that this conspiracy theory is, show them evidence against the conspiracy theory, what do? Well, the response is, it goes deeper than we thought. Right?
Yeah.
So no amount of facts will persuade someone if they're committed to that. And this is an interesting thing. You never want to make a person decide or make a person choose between what is true and what they want to be true, because they will always disappoint you. People will seek out facts that confirm their deeply held beliefs. That is the story as old as time. That is one thing that I know for sure. Because it's hard to face that your worldview might be incorrect. That's a tough pill to swallow, especially if you deeply identify with something. If you try to convince a conservative that liberal's best, or a Jew that Christianity's best, or diamond hands to sell, I mean, you're challenging their worldview. You're challenging their person.
Yeah.
And that's not, they're just going to go buy more. They're just going to just read the Bible more. They're going to, Yeah. No, so this is a tough thing.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And it works in that if you try and convince like a Trump supporter that, you know, he kind of wasted his time in office, and he might have owned the libs, but there's, way more he could have done, like to actually stand up for the, values that he claimed to be espousing, and he didn't do it. And the same, or you can look at like people who, love Joe Biden, and you could say, I think he might be like a little bit kind of losing his mind a wee bit, like dementia, or he's not all there at some times. Some points he's fine, and some points he's just like not there in the way you would hope. And you should be able to look at either of those things and go, well, objectively.
Yeah, you've got a good point there, and that's the thing that people will. If I sit down at a dinner table and I have this conversation with someone, they will, because the social mores of being in person, be like, yeah, okay, I see your point of view, and you will be compassionate and kind and willing to hear people out. But online, no, it goes to Hitler real quick. It always goes, that's Godwin's law, right? Mm-hmm. Given a long enough comment thread, Hitler will be mentioned. For some reason, people online just can't take it. I don't know what it is, but it could be that people carefully craft their online presence. If you're on Facebook, what I show on Facebook is my best self. I only show the good things. When I travel, when I look particularly dapper that day, that's the photo I'm going to use. But the days that I'm sick or my hair's all messed up, those photos don't go on. I'm carefully crafting that online presence. And if someone challenges that, I spent so hard. And so you're challenging this person's image of themselves. And people can't take that. I think people have a really hard time with that.
Yeah. So I think it's like an in-group kind of thing, because it feels like, even if it's some stranger on the internet, that you're being spoken to by someone who's like right there in the room with you. And if they insult you, it's like it feels worse for some reason, or it can feel worse if you allow it to, unless you can step back and go, like, hang on, this is just some guy on the internet. Like,
this is just I don't care what this person thinks. Yeah. And it's also, no one would say these things to a person's face. Right. I mean, some of the stuff you see online, you would never say it to an actual person, like the cashier at the register or your barista. You wouldn't. There's no way. People, but they feel very safe behind the keyboard.
Yeah. You wouldn't like, if you saw like the cashier wearing like a MAGA pin, you wouldn't be like, well, suck a dick, Trump tard, and walk off.
You're right. You would just kind of roll your eyes and go away, because no one wants actual confrontation. And I wonder if the same thing's on Zoom, because so I can see you right now, but you're 1,000 miles away. But nevertheless, I would feel bad, to your virtual face insulting you. So I wonder if Zoom chat, someone's got to study that. If someone's listening, study trolls on Zoom. I want to hear about that.
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess we used to have chat roulette, but
that's true. That's why we can't have nice things.
Yeah. What was it Cartman says in the South Park episode where they're on chat roulette? It's like, this is how the world works. If you want to find some quality friends, you got to wade through all the dicks first.
Exactly.
Which is
terrible.
Very accurate.
Yep. I was never on chat roulette. That wasn't my jam.
Oh, no, I don't think I did that a couple times. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you got like funny people for like 5 minutes and then they go away. But so do you buy? So you know what the dead internet theory is? That basically since about 5 years ago, the internet's been like 50% bots or more. Like, do you think that's? What do you make of that theory, at least?
Yeah. So, it's in short, no. It's an interesting theory. I see where they're coming from, though. I don't know who initially espoused that, but there is some truth in that. And so the truth that exists is that most of what we see online has been somehow goosed or manipulated or artificially promoted. So there's a whole cabal of individuals and accounts that if I'm trying to sell an agenda or a vacuum cleaner, I need to get people to see that post. So how do I do that? Well, I can buy an ad on Facebook and Twitter and Google, or I can manipulate the search rankings. It costs me $100,000 to run an ad campaign. It costs me $1,000 to buy a bunch of accounts to get them to like and share and upvote. So what am I going to do? That's obvious. I'm going to like and share and upvote. I'm going to manipulate that. And like we showed before, it only takes a handful of votes to get it to the front page. In fact, how do I say this? I couldn't do this because it's unethical, but there was a folks at a Point, which is a YouTube channel. They have a video called Reddit for Sale. I encourage you to watch it. And what they did is they took, I think it was $75, and they bought a few hundred accounts, and they got a made-up article on Brexit. This was actually a few months before Brexit happened.
Oh, yeah.
To the front page. And the article was just garbage. It was just someone pounding on the keyboard. But since no one actually reads the article, it doesn't matter. But the headline was important. The headline was pro-Brexit. And it stayed on the front page of Reddit and Twitter for about a day. And it cost $75. It's easy as that. And it's the same kind of thing of early votes. You get attention. And then I think they bought 200 votes, but at the end of the day, it got like 10,000 votes because people see it, they like the headline, they upvote it. And they did the same thing with a video of Narcos season 3, like a trailer for. There is no Narcos season 3. They spent $100, and then at the end of the day, I think it was HBO or Netflix or whoever it is had to say there is no Narcos season 3. So it's $100. Now, so that for your dead internet theory, there's truth in that. So what is popular is completely. I mean, who's to say what will become popular? We actually ran a study of on Reddit and Imager, where we took a really popular image and an image that had just like 5 votes. And we asked 100,000 people which one got more votes on Reddit or Imager or Facebook, which, wherever we got it from. And we asked 100,000 people to play this kind of game. And can you guess which image was more popular? It was called guessthekarma.com. And people played this game, and random guessing is 50-50, 50% accuracy. People got the answer correct 52% of the time, which is to say, something that had 100,000 votes and something that had 10 votes, it's indistinguishable, which is to say that what appears popular online is anyone's guess. It's completely random, and it's impossible to predict. So, which is kind of unfortunate. I figured the algorithms would be better at surfacing content that people think is popular, but they're not.
Okay. So this brings us very nicely to the next thing I wanted to ask about. So
okay.
It's more of a like intuition. I wouldn't call it a belief. It's not based on that much other than like talking to other people and them having not dismissed this out of hand, essentially. But there was a period in at least, for example, in YouTube's history, right, where the algorithm was incredible. It was fantastic at showing me like a beautiful blend of like new things that I might like, new pieces, new videos from channels I subscribe to, and old videos from channels I might have subscribed to recently, or like it was like I would go on to my YouTube homepage and I would immediately be like, oh, want to watch this, want to watch this, want to watch this. And it was really really good at figuring out what I wanted to watch. But over the last couple of years, it has got increasingly worse. Like, it's to the point where sometimes I could scroll pages of my YouTube algorithm and not see one video that I want to watch. And the suggestions that I have seen, at least, is that the algorithm has been changed in order to promote the type of content that YouTube wants to have promoted, and to demote or not push forward the content that they consider to be extreme or fringe or not advertiser friendly. Now, that to me is not, that's to me saying that we could make a really good algorithm if we wanted, but that there are conflicts of interests of what at the top of these companies with deciding what goes into the algorithm in terms of like trying to make it the most profitable for them, not just the best service. So basically, like, I think that the reason for that is that there's been attempts to manipulate an algorithm that was based on just giving people what they want.
Yeah. So you're touching on something that is a balancing act. And so I know a lot of people at YouTube and Facebook, and they went to school with many of them. They're friends of mine. First point I want to make is that these people who are trying their best to make these algorithms they're ethical, honest, hardworking people that you would probably get along with. Now, the bit to your question is there's a balancing act of giving people what they want to see, and then also running a business, not necessarily maximizing profits, but if you just get people what they want to see, we found that devolves into unfortunate trash sometimes.
Well, yes.
Facebook, for example, has a problem right now where people are leaving it because there's nothing interesting on Facebook anymore. And then Facebook has this idea of, and all of the content you see is all manipulated garbage. And so Facebook has this idea, this problem now, so where they have to show people what they want to see, but not show them garbage. And it's this balancing act of keeping making a service usable, while also keeping the servers on. And I think part of me, the capitalist in me, wants to say that this whole garbage internet is going to fix itself because the companies have an incentive to not provide a crap service. Right? People go to Facebook because there's a utility in Facebook. People go to YouTube and not, I don't know, what's a Medialite or, wow, there's some other services out there, I guess, because there's a utility in going to YouTube. And they go to Google because there's a utility in going to Google. They could very easily go back to MySpace if we wanted to. MySpace still exists. It's still, you can get an account and blog all you want. As soon as people stop seeing the utility, they're going to stop going to it. And so these companies have that balancing act of, and so maybe it'll self-correct. Like all the garbage we see, the companies will start like, listen, no one's going to come to our Facebook site or Facebook if all we show them is garbage. And I think that's starting to happen, actually. People have said they're going to Instagram and TikTok and other places, but then of course TikTok has its own problems that as it becomes popular, the tragedy of the commons happens again, and then it starts to the wheels start to come off. No one's really figured it out yet. But now to your question, has YouTube changed their algorithm? Probably, yes. The CEO of YouTube stepped down, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. And so there's a new person at the helm, and so they might have a different way of running things. I don't have any inside information there. In my experience, the companies, they want to keep users thinking that there's utility coming to the site. They want to keep people on the site. And that's what the algorithms are optimized for. So I'm actually an AI machine learning scientist. That's my primary goal. And so how these systems work is that there's a function that they have to optimize. And in machine learning, there's usually like accuracy, precision, recall. is the answer that the algorithm provided the answer that is correct? Now, for Facebook and YouTube and Reddit, the algorithm, the optimization is, did the person click on the ad? Did the person stay on the site? The optimization is not, did this person get good information? And so I'm sure that YouTube is constantly tweaking what they're optimizing for. And maybe they steered it one way or the other, and that's probably the changes that you're seeing.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of at least some of the direction that YouTube have decided to push their algorithm in, and it's to promote like the sort of larger, more corporate channels. Like people have accused it of no longer being YouTube because it's not people like you anymore doing the creating, and which to your point actually is making new services sort of pop up. I think we're gonna see just how powerful these big companies have become when we see if they still have their monopoly as such in 5 to 10
so
years.
If TikTok comes up, will YouTube put their thumb on it and somehow crush TikTok?
I think TikTok is probably closer to Instagram, and
you're probably
YouTube's
right.
main competitor is actually, I'd say, Odyssey.com at the minute.
Sure.
Or Rumble.
Okay.
So those are the two places that I'm looking at. Because like in an ideal world, right, what would happen is YouTube would see their competitors coming, and if they were doing things in a way that was bringing them a lot more customers, YouTube would self-correct and go, hey, hang on, we're losing this part of the market because we're doing X, let's try Y instead. And like you said, like we might be in this nice place where we get to a point that we're just sort of, we're in the middle of a whole bunch of teething problems for a new technology that we probably don't even know what it is.
Yeah. And that's true. Like every time there's a new technology that's come about, be it the printing press, the assembly line, the newspaper industries, the television and radio, it's taken society a good, 15, 20 years to kind of figure it out, understand it, grapple with it. And then it has a nice maybe 15, 20 years of kind of glide path, and then something else comes along and disrupts it. And we're in probably the middle of the grappling with what is social media right now. The next thing coming out will be probably AI and trust in information. That's my next thing is at some point, the videos that you see online, how do you know that this is an actual video shot by an actual camera and not some Marvel movie that was stitched together and AI'd? It's going to be difficult to distinguish the two.
What do you think of?
And that's when
blockchain stamps on things like that to prove authenticity.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a cryptographer yesterday about exactly this. You somehow stamp it, but then, but what you can do is just take a screenshot and then re-upload something to the blockchain. And so these are difficult things. There's the W3C, which is the standards organization on the web, is trying to figure out right now. I'm a member of that group. Is trying to figure out how do we establish that this content is authentic and credible. And it's a difficult thing that we're trying to figure out, but it's tough. And as soon as we do, there'll be someone will come along with a way to circumvent it. It's kind of one of those bullets in armor. As we get better munitions, we got to get better armor. We get better armor, we have to get better munitions. And that's the way it's always been, and it'll continue to be.
Yeah, it's kind of like an evolutionary arms race. We're fighting the ads, or fighting the trolls, or whoever you see to be the enemy on the internet.
Yeah, I'm still though. I'm waiting on, and tell me if I'm wrong, but where are all the deep fakes? I was promised deep fakes.
Yeah,
and I haven't seen any.
Yeah,
I mean, like every deep fake I see is, this is a deep fake. Look how good it's getting. But there's not actually been, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's a.
Can you think of something that was like that went out and everyone was concerned and convinced that Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Boris Johnson said a thing, but no, that was actually deep fake.
I know there was a very convincing Obama video, but like they announced it as a deep fake when they put it out. They were like, look, like you said, look how good this Obama video is. I haven't seen that happen. I was incredibly concerned that was going to happen. I mean, you had other fireworks of your own, but I was concerned that was something like that was going to happen during the election. It would be like someone would put out like a video of Joe Biden or Donald Trump conceding, and then or something like that, like a fake.
Yeah,
that's a good.
That's
point.
true. I actually think since something that I'm wondering is I think the shallow fakes and just the simple MS Paint manipulations are actually where a lot of the content is. These memes.
Yeah.
People will post these and make these, and they're trying to make a point, and people will take them and reshare them and not manipulate, but alter them and use them for their own purposes. They're clearly fake. I mean, they're not trying to be convincing, but they're using imagery to spread a message. And that's something that I think has been taking off in the past year or so, and will continue to really grow and expand. People communicate now via images.
Do you think that's only the last year or two?
Well, it's been happening for the past 5 years, but I've seen it expanding tremendously in the past year or so. But you're right, it's been around for a long time. But it was just kind of I remember seeing it was kind of a fringe thing where people I think it was 4chan and 8chan that was big into doing this. But now it's coming a lot on mainstream social media, like on Reddit and Facebook and Twitter. It's happening a lot more now. Well, we'll see where it takes us. But so that's where I'm not concerned so much about deep fakes. I'm more concerned about the spread of this imagery and what this imagery is trying to say.
Can you give me an example of it, of the thing that you've like more specifically? If you got something you could suggest.
Yeah. So we're actually been studying Indonesia.
Okay.
Right now, and in Indonesia, there was a presidential election a year, maybe 2 years ago now, and there's hand gestures that you make. So one means I'm voting for the number 1 on the ballot, and this finger thumb means you're voting for number 2 on the ballot. And people will take that finger and thumb, and they'll superimpose it on other images to say that this person is supporting the challenger, this person is supporting the current president. And that kind of copy paste is huge over there right now. It's kind of a meme in itself, where it said this person is a stupid supporter of the opposition. This person's a stupid supporter of the current president. That's something that comes to mind initially. There's also the idea of do you know like the Winnie the Pooh meme?
Yeah.
That's people are talking about Xi Jinping. So they'll just put Winnie the Poohs in things to say this is Xi Jinping doing something that they don't like.
I love
this type of commentary that is really difficult to track. You can't just it's not a hashtag. You can't just search for it. It's a new mode of communication, and also with just emojis, right? Apparently, their emojis mean things that they don't mean. And there's a whole sub language that I don't understand.
It's like the symbols on the alethiometer in the Northern Lights. I don't know if you've read that series of books. It was by Philip Pullman. It's called His Dark Materials. It got turned into a film with Nicole.
Oh,
Kidman.
Yeah, no, it became an HBO series, right?
Yeah, right. I need to watch the second half of that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So we went from hieroglyphics to papyrus to Latin text. Now we're back to hieroglyphics again, which is kind of an interesting arc in our communication.
Well, I mean, maybe what we saw of the ancient Egyptians was just the tail end of a very smart society, and that's what we've got to now.
That's true.
With emojis.
Of course, they spoke in emojis, and we speak in emojis. Yeah, but the point of that is it's really difficult to have, I don't know, political parties or organizations or hate groups grok what's being said, because it's a subculture and they just don't understand the language. I don't understand the language, and I work with college students all day long, and they don't understand the language. So,
got to spend.
It's a brave new world out there, Josh, and I don't have the answers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the theory that like what you're saying has been around for quite a while longer. I don't think we have Donald Trump without that phenomenon. So I think it's been a lot more prevalent, at least in parts of the internet, than perhaps even you're saying. But then you could be talking about something far more specific and like a particular genre of what I'm sort of referring to. But memes definitely rule the world. But anyway, Tim, I know I've been taking a lot of your time here. So do you want to tell people where they can find you and your work and social media or whatever you want to plug?
Yeah. So I actually don't have a Twitter account. Well, I have a Twitter account, but I am not active. You can find me at timweninger.com. Just Google it. You can see my work, some of my research papers, some videos on it. Otherwise, you can Google Changing the Hive Mind and watch that video. Also, Reddit for Sale. I highly encourage you all to go and check that out by point. Otherwise, Josh, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. And thanks for your interesting questions, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a pleasure to chat to you. You definitely gave me some cool ideas to think about. If you end up in the book, I'll let you know.
Please. Yeah, sure, that's wonderful.
But yeah, for all the links for the things you just said, I will stick in the description below. I was just making a note of what to remember to do. So yeah, I'll put that in the description below for people. But yeah, man, thanks very much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate you tuning in and making it all the way to the end of the show. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.